On this episode of Big Sky Now, we finally get to discuss the Brawl of the Wild. I've been waiting for it all season. I think everyone tuning in will really like our discussion towards the end of the episode. We also talk about last week's games in Week 12 and how Montana and Montana State were able to get wins before their big matchup. Also, Idaho was robbed of a victory against Sacramento State, so you want to be checked in for that. Before we start, I'd like to give a thank you to M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's not waste any time and get right to it. Welcome back, everyone, to the Big Sky Now podcast. I am your host, Luke Schmit. Today, I am joined by Daily Interlake Sports Editor Fritz Neighbor, Daily Interlake Sports Reporter John Allen, Coeur d'Alene Press Sports Editor Mark Nelke, and Columbia Basin Herald Sports Reporter Mike Maynard. Guys, it's a week I've been waiting for since I've started this podcast with you all. It's Cat Grizz week. Super thrilled to get into that. We will save the talk for the end of the episode because we do have some games to get into first from Week 12. We're going to jump it off to Fritz since we're going to talk about Montana and Portland State, where Portland State took the lead early in this one, but the Grizz did dominate on Saturday. Fritz, what were your thoughts on the Grizz victory before their big matchup in Missoula Saturday?
Well, it's kind of nice to see them, jump out and then keep going. I know they fell behind 7-0, letting Portland State recover the opening kickoff. But we sat there, the three of us. We had a quorum at the Interlake office and sat and watched the game, and we talked a little bit about how defenders aren't turning around on those deep passes, and next thing we know, they had 5 interceptions, and now they lead the Big Sky with 18 as a defense. I think next in line is 13. That's Eastern, has 13 of them. They play this 3-3-5 defense. They play a 3-man front, but they bring the linebackers a lot, create pressure. It's a good defense. It's really good when you have some dominant players like, Alex Governor or California's own Patrick O'Connell playing linebacker, Colt Anderson back at safety. They don't really have that one guy this year, but I think it covers up for some stuff. That little zone shell that they play behind that pressure, it has some open areas, and it was good to see them as a defense turn and find the ball and make plays on those passes that were in the air. Because for a while there, it looked like yet another quarterback was just having a career day against the Grizz defense. So I like that Eli Gilman showed his explosiveness and still stayed fresh for this week. He had 10 carries, I think. A lot of the twos got in for the second straight week, but unlike last week, the points kept coming, 63 in all. That puts that Eastern narrow victory a little bit farther in the rear view.
It definitely does, Fritz. 42 points scored for the Grizz in the second half. I think it's important that they're able to get their twos in since they have a huge test coming up with Montana State coming to town. And like you said, Eli Gilman showed his explosiveness again. And yeah, I think overall the secondary has been a question mark for Grizz fans this season. I think when teams are playing Montana, they tend to have, as you said, career days or more success in the pass game. So even though Portland State isn't the high caliber win that, we would say, it's still good to see them finding the ball and the DBs basically 5 interceptions. I mean, how can you argue that? Speaking of tons of interceptions, we had them all week 12. Let's go to Mike here next. Mike, Eastern has 5 interceptions as well in their route over Northern Colorado. Jake Shackle continues to impress me with the way he's playing. I think they found their quarterback for the future to come. Hopefully he does not transfer because I think Eastern does have a good one on their roster. What was your takeaway in the victory?
Yeah, I think this was a good game to kind of get that spark back that they had when they kind of all of a sudden were 3-1 in the Big Sky and kind of a dark horse for a moment there. So yeah, really good win. I think the defense really shined with three other guys getting their first picks of the year, and then Jalen Jenkins has been quite the breakout defensive back for them. 5th interception himself all season, so he's been clutch for them all throughout the year. Can't quite make out if he was recognized. I don't think he's a senior, so getting him back will be huge. If they can keep him around next year. And then, yeah, no, it'll be very interesting to see what the future looks like for Jake Shakel after this season, and Nate Bell as well, who made a lot of strides running the ball as a quarterback, and can pass the ball pretty efficiently. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what the future holds there and how that battle will shake out, and maybe they can work them both into the game plan, and that maybe makes the offense more diverse.
Yeah, I see a brighter future coming for the Eagles, and I'm sure their fans are excited with Jake at the helm. If you did not see, Jared Taylor did step away from the team, so he's going to be the guy, I assume, on their last regular season game on Saturday. Let's go to a game I really want to hear about from Mark, as Idaho lost to Sacramento State. But if you guys did see, there was a huge missed, where they should be a missed call. Technically, they reviewed a catch that was out of bounds, and ultimately somehow they ruled it inbounds. And the refs from the Idaho Sacramento State game have been suspended since that game I saw today. So I do feel bad for Vandals fans. They feel like they were robbed of a win. But Mark, what were your thoughts on that end of the game and overall everything?
Well, first I think when I'm done, we need to go back to Mike's cat and ask the cat what he thought. This is the first time we've had 6 on the podcast, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, what a crazy ending. And like you said, Luke, the fact that the Big Sky suspended those guys pretty much cemented what everybody saw. It was kind of weird watching live, because I was trying to figure out, they called it a catch. And so you're trying to wonder, okay, what did they see to call it a catch? And then you watch the replay, and the angles weren't great. The 50-yard line camera, you couldn't see the sideline because the advertising boards were in the way. So you saw the angle from the behind the goalpost shooting down through the guy's back, and you could it looked like you could see, if you look hard, you could see his foot land before his back of his right shoulder landed. So you thought that would have been a clue. And then they had a shot from across the way at the goal line that seemed to show the same thing. So I don't know why they didn't overturn it, looking at either of those, unless it was one of those things that it's a catch and we have to be 100% sure it wasn't a catch, and they were like 99% sure it wasn't, but they just couldn't, for sure say it, because it was still kind of a muddy angle. Actually, the best angle was probably that guy's cell phone that was on the Sacramento State side, that he kind of followed it. You can see that plain as day. The guy's right foot landed like a foot out of bounds well before his shoulder did. So, but obviously the refs don't have that angle. So anyway, it was obviously too bad for the Vandals. They deserved the win, and I guess it's a good thing it didn't cost them a playoff spot, because they were already out of the playoffs, but it at least kept Sac State's hope alive. We'll see what happens this week with UC Davis, but it was kind of obviously too bad for the Vandals. And then they missed on the touchdown. They let the guy run right by him for the touchdown. So tough ending for the Vandals, and finding out 2 days later that they were right probably doesn't make them feel a whole lot better.
Absolutely. Fritz, do you have anything to add to this one, or did you see the play? And I kind of want to get your thoughts if you saw that.
Well, I was just going to say that must be a continued blind spot in Hornet Stadium, because 2 or 3 years ago, the Grizz went down there and were holding on to a 24-17 lead, and they Sac State threw a pass to the 4-yard line. And it was not a 4th down play, but it was getting down close. And same thing, Sac State receiver was clearly out of bounds from everybody every angle that we could see. And they still gave him the 20 for a gain, and they punched it in, and they won in overtime and beat the Grizz. And it was one of those games where the Lucas Johnson, the Grizz quarterback, got put out of the game. Just kind of a tough loss for the Grizz. And then no statement was really made by the Big Sky Conference, except that they said there weren't enough camera angles to really get a definitive look at it. And so here we are 3 years later, and basically the same thing happened again. So, yeah, that's not going to make the Vandals and their fans feel any better, but I guess that's progress.
Yeah, I guess you could say it is progress, Fritz. It's honestly unexcusable to me. I don't understand. I've watched the replay, 8, 9 times. I don't understand how you can not overturn that, but they have to live another day, and Sacramento State improves to 5-2 in the Big Sky, and they're starting to make their way back after midseason. Some people were writing them off, but something sounds a little bit fishy with some officiating over the years, like you said, Fritz. Let's go to John now. John, Ty Pennington put up those numbers that you were talking about at the beginning of the season in their game versus Cal Poly. The victory, he threw for 356 yards, 4 touchdowns, excuse me. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, if you didn't get to watch it, this was actually a really good game with some questionable decisions late on from Northern Arizona, but I feel like the Lumberjacks really should have put this one away in the first half. They left 10 points on the board with a missed field goal, and then they went for a 4th and 1 down at the 5-yard line, got stuffed on the end around, so that puts them behind. And then Cal Poly's backup quarterback, Anthony Grigsby, comes in for the last 2 possessions, and he throws up a Hail Mary and gets a 56-yard touchdown on the last play of the first half, and that pulls Cal Poly back within 5. And so it just was some moments where the Lumberjacks should have put it away, and then they get an interception when Cal Poly's down inside the 30, and they look like they're going to be able to put it away. They get to a 4th and 1 again at their own 28, and they decide to go for it. And it was not the correct decision. They got stuffed again on a 4th and 1 there, and Cal Poly nearly turned it into a touchdown the very next play. Would have had a 2-point conversion to tie it at that point, but the Lumberjacks ended up holding on and got the stop and moved to 7-4 on the season. So yeah, it definitely was one that I feel like Pennington played great. The Northern Arizona offense in general played really solid, except for maybe the one interception that came down, and that was just it was a ball that was there. Pennington just threw it to the wrong shoulder on Cassis going deep. Cassis had an incredible game. Colby Cassis caught a streak touchdown late in the first half. He had another big touchdown later on, had 3 on the day total. So yeah, it was one that Northern Arizona definitely should have put away, and one that Cal Poly had to be thinking, man, we're still in this game despite giving up 150 more yards as the game goes on, and they got the key stops when they needed to. So as for Cal Poly on the offensive side, they kind of split between Grigsby and Diefenbach. Neither one really was outstanding. Grigsby had the bigger catches. He had a couple 50-yard passes, including that Hail Mary, but he ended up 5 of 12. Diefenbach threw 2 interceptions. I think they had 3 as a team. So, yeah, it was one that I feel like Northern Arizona should have put away earlier than they did.
Yeah, that Hail Mary at the end of the first half, I think definitely changed some momentum coming out for Cal Poly. Even though they did score 10 points in the second half, I think this game was a lot closer than some anticipated. We got to keep rolling here now, and let's talk about Fritz's Bengals. Mark, they win 3 games in a row. Idaho State blows out Weber State 31-3. Talk to me about how important these wins are for the program and, shifting towards next season. And, they're honestly one of the most fun teams I've watched this year in the Big Sky.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they haven't had much success as a program, ever. I mean, they go back to their 84 national title team. Go back 40 years to find something, we're talking about with them. So yeah, this is huge to win to win 3 and to go into the off season feeling good about themselves. And if they beat the Vandals, that's even better. They've always had, under Cody Hawkins, they've always had the passing game. So they've been, fun to watch. And now in the last couple of years, they've added a defense and a running game. So they're getting a little more well-rounded. It'll be curious to see who all comes back next year, because they have a lot of good players who could come back, but we all know what the current landscape of college football is. It's a year-to-year thing. But anyway, it's good for them. It's cool for them to be winning and maybe hopefully go in the off season with another win.
Fritz, your thoughts on your Bengals?
My Bengals. Oh, I was just curious. They've won 3 in a row, and I was wondering the last time it happened. It was 2018. Rob Fennessy was there for a few years as head coach. He had the one good 6-5 season, and they won 3 that year. And I think Kramer was there for a few years. He only had the one really good season. and then a couple really bad ones. And so I think Cody Hawkins has built some consistency there, and it's good to see. I think it's good for the league when Idaho State is viable.
I agree with you, Fritz. And, I'd like to see Jordan Cook come back. Definitely a senior year, and they're a team next year that could be reckoned with. And as we've said and saw this season, playing in Pocatello is not easy, and they've almost gave the Grizz a loss, which their fans could argue that it should have been a loss because Montana really had an uphill battle from the start. So I'm impressed with Idaho State. And on the other end, Weber State, obviously they're coming off firing their coach, and maybe they were going to have an interim coach boost, but we didn't see it this week. And, the program down there in Utah, it's got a long step to go. But let's keep going here because we have a fun game to talk about Saturday night. We had a top 10 ranked matchup. UC Davis traveled to Montana State, and Caden Dowler stole the show. He had 2 interceptions, including one of them was a pick 6. And Dowler has had 3 interceptions in his last 2 weeks. Fritz, let's hear your thoughts again on the national televised game and how Montana State fared against the Aggies.
It was a little bit of a slow start for the Bobcats, sort of like the Grizz did. They fell behind 7-0. But, man, that defense, and I think we all knew or have known for a couple of years who Taco Dowler is for the Bobcats, the good receiver and return man. And it's kind of like league of their own. We have 2 Dowlers. We have Taco Dowler, and then we have this other Dowler, Taco's brother. But now Caden's making a name for himself, and he's by far the leading tackler on the team with 72. He has 5.5 tackles for loss. He has 4 breakups. He has 3 INTs. He's forced a couple fumbles. With Rex Connors out for UC Davis, he's my pick for the Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. I'll just say it. And I talked a little bit about the slow start, but Bill Lamberty, their SID, points out that they have outscored the Bobcats, have outscored their opponents 134-27 in the second quarter and 100-0 in the third quarter. This is post Oregon, which was a blowout by the Ducks. I don't know. They just seem really good, and it's going to be I think it might be an uphill battle for the Grizz this weekend.
I agree, Fritz. That defense, especially with Edith on the D-line, controlling, and I think they're able to really make their way. And honestly, Lamson and Julius Davis, Adam Jones, that team is just rolling, and it's going to be hard for Montana to win on Saturday. We'll get into it here soon, but if that game was in Bozeman, I think things would be very different. I just wanted to let John add in on this game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Montana State did a good job of bringing Caden Pinnock back down to earth. The freshman high, and definitely with Caden Dowler getting those 2 interceptions. I also kind of wanted to note, if you've followed along at all with the nicknames for Taco Dowler and Caden, his brother. Caden's nickname originally when they picked that up was Burrito. They were Taco and Burrito. So maybe we should bring back Burrito Dowler getting those interceptions.
I love that, John. That's great. Thanks for adding that in. Let's jump to the next week, guys. It's our final week of the regular season. I can't believe how fast it's gone by. We're going to be in week 13, which features the Montana Super Bowl, as some call it, the Brawl of the Wild. It's going to be an awesome showdown to win the Big Sky Conference Saturday in Missoula. We're going to jump to some other games first, and then we will deep dive that game last, as we like to save the best for last. I'm going to go back to Mike here to start. Mike, Eastern ends the regular season at Cal Poly. Let's hear what you think about maybe this matchup and how the Eagles can keep building on the success they've had this season. Personally, I think they've outdone what I thought in the preseason predictions, but I'd always love to hear your take on what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think after their loss to Montana, gave those guys a really good run for their money. I felt like these last 2 games were perfect for the Eagles to finish strong, and I think I like their odds going out, even going on the road. Jake Shackle's really coming on, finding his stride and stepping up as a leader for this team. So I'm really excited to see what he's able to do. I think this team is better than what their record indicates. And I think they've showed that many times throughout the season. I think there's just some areas where they just haven't quite put it together. But yeah, I think that secondary is stellar. They have really shined this year, especially Jalen Jenkins again. Like I said earlier, I feel like he's really broke out this year in the absence of preseason All-American Deshaun Wells. So I feel pretty good about this team and what they're going to be able to do, and I think they'll finish the season 6-6 and ride some momentum, and hopefully it carries over into next season.
Definitely, Mike. And yeah, if Eastern wins 5-3 in the Big Sky, they'll improve too, with their only losses coming from the top 3 teams. So if you would have told me that preseason, I definitely would have been a little bit surprised. So have to give hats off here to the Eagles on a good season. And looks like they have some players going forward that kind of like similar to Idaho State, as we said, next season could be a team that could be tough in the Big Sky. Super fun matchup I'm excited to talk about as well. I'm going to talk to Mark here. We have the Battle of the Domes on Saturday. Let's hear your thoughts on the matchup with Idaho and Idaho State.
Well, I think Idaho answered the question last week of whether they had something to play for, even though they weren't going to be in the playoffs. Obviously, they should have beaten Sacramento State, if not for that call. On Idaho State side, this will be their best chance to beat Idaho in recent years. I think maybe the last one was 2018, I believe. They're a little more well-rounded this year. The first couple of times Cody coached against them, they lost big. And so, but this year they're a little more well-rounded, and Idaho's not quite as good. So, but I'll still give the edge to Idaho playing at home. But what a momentum thing it would be for Idaho State to either win the game or play really well going into the offseason.
Yeah, honestly, I think it could be culture changing for Idaho State to go in there and get the win, maybe a passing of the torch almost, even though Idaho has been more successful lately. If we can see Idaho State pull off a win Saturday, I'd be very interested to see where the Bengals trend to next year as one of those top Big Sky teams. Let's jump to our next game here. John, I'm going to go back to you for Northern Arizona. They're going to Weber State, a team that's not been successful this season. Do you see Northern Arizona as a frisky playoff team this year, or what are your thoughts about them getting in this year?
Yeah, I feel like this is a must-win game, of course. I don't think 5 losses from the Big Sky is going to get you in to the playoffs this year. It'll be right on the fringe for a couple of those teams out of the Missouri Valley, but I definitely feel like Northern Arizona has to get this one. It's one of those ones where they need to impress as well, just for seeding. So can't let them hang in like they did Cal Poly last week. I definitely do feel, though, that this Northern Arizona team, when they play to their full potential, has the ability to go out and win. Definitely a first-round game, potentially give some trouble to a team in a quarterfinal or a second-round game. They just have to play to their full ability, and they haven't done that a lot this year. So, especially when they go up against good teams like we saw Montana State, I really thought that was going to be a game for them at home to take advantage, and they just kind of went flat. So, yes, I do feel like they have potential to be a good team in the playoffs. Can they bring that potential to the field is what remains to be seen.
Yeah, and if Northern Arizona can start playing their best football at the end of the season, like you said, they could be a dangerous first, second, even, quarterfinal team. And, you have Pennington at the helm. So when you have a good quarterback, especially on the road, that's going to make a huge difference. So I think they'll win this week, obviously, with Weber State being down. But I'm interested to see kind of where they stack up in the future. John, I'm going to bounce it back to you before we talk about the Brawl of the Wild here. We have a really good matchup with Sacramento State and UC Davis. Sacramento State getting pretty lucky after their win, after they scored a touchdown with 9 seconds left after that missed call we talked about where they ruled it inbounds. I think this is a must-win for both schools. Obviously, UC Davis is coming off a loss, but Sacramento State's trying to make that jump to the third team in the Big Sky. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Davis should be in my opinion. It definitely gets dicey if they don't pick up the win here, but currently at 8-3, that should bode well for them going forward. Sacramento State, on the other hand, definitely need to go out and win this one. This would be the signature win that they're lacking this season. Went through and just kind of took a peek at everything. They haven't beaten a team that's currently above 500. Their best wins were Eastern Washington and Mercyhurst when it comes to records. So the power that is Mercyhurst. So yeah, they need to come out and play well, and it's a good old rivalry game, the Causeway Classic. So they'll definitely want to end their Big Sky time on a high. UC Davis is also going to be playing for that seeding aspect as well. So a win for them could move them back up. I think I saw a projection earlier that they were around a 13 seed. So definitely a loss does hurt that and could make it a lot more nerve-wracking on selection day than it needs to be. But Sacramento State needs a win. UC Davis needs to not get blown out.
I think you're right on the money, John. If Sacramento State trying to get in, UC Davis, they don't want to fall back where they have to do that uphill battle of away games. I know Caden Pinnock's been great this year, but a freshman on the road consistently from back to back to back weeks doesn't bode well for a successful playoff run, in my opinion. But this will probably be, I think, one of the games of the week for sure, because both teams are playing for something, if it's seeding or getting in the playoffs at least. All right, guys, it's finally time. Waited months, honestly, since last year to talk about this game. I'm going to let Fritz have the honor to give us his notes, and we're going to dive into the Brawl of the Wild this year. Fritz, go ahead.
My first note is that this game already had a great name, Cat Grizz. But because Grizz fans insisted on saying it was Grizz Cat, somebody came up with Brawl of the Wild. Now we're stuck with that. It's going to be 48 degrees on Saturday. Should be a great day for football. I'll be interested to see how Grizzly offensive line under its third coach in 3 seasons holds up against the Bobcats front four, which goes too deep at every position. I think Luke mentioned Kenneth Iden. There's Dominic Solano. There's Talon Marsh, who had the big boy touchdown a couple weeks ago. Paul Brutt's a great player. Zach Cruz is coming into his own. You look at how the Cats have outscored their conference opponents, 332 to 82. It just sticks out. It's just eye-catching. I haven't seen any odds. I wouldn't be surprised if they were favored. I still think the Grizz being at home is a huge advantage. Conversely, when the Bobcats are home against the Grizz, they seem to solve that 3-3-5 and run without really much worry. It's been different the last 2 years, or the last 2 trips to Missoula. So we'll see how that goes for him. I think it's a great QB battle with Ayat against Lamson. It's a great running back battle with Eli Gelman on one side and Adam Jones and Julius Davis on the other. I do like UM's receiving core a little bit better. Each team has had kind of a weird game. I think people forget about that 17-0 win MSU had over Mercyhurst, where each team had 6 possessions, and that was it. And then U of M just a couple weeks ago had that squeaker, which, I was convinced by the end of that game that they were going to lose, drop that game to Eastern. So special teams will play a huge role. They're both really good. I think somebody pointed out that MSU has actually been better at returning punts and kickoffs this year, which is a little surprising. But I think it'll be, a slow start for both teams and then a knockdown drag out. We haven't had a close game in this series for a while, but I think it'll be close on Saturday.
I think it'll be close as well, Fritz. And like you said, special teams is a huge reason we've seen in the past with Montana having blocked field goals, return for touchdowns at home. And for the Cats, the rushing game has dominated when they win at home as well. So I think you're also right on the money when talking about a huge key of the game is going to be the Grizz offensive line against that Montana State defensive line. I think whatever side can win that matchup, it's going to bode well, and it's going to be the difference in my opinion. Let's go to Mark here. Mark, I know you're not here in Montana, so I'll let you and Mike go next, and then we'll end it with John. So let's hear what your thoughts are on the matchup this week.
Well, pretty close, only 50 or 60 miles away from the border, but yeah. I hear you. First of all, I'm with Fritz. I'm going to call it Cat Grizz too, because that's what I remember it being called growing up. I know if you believe the internet, and Fritz could verify this, was a sports writer dubbed it Brawl of the Wild in the late 90s. So I guess that's not too bad a thing if a sports writer came up with a name for the game. But I prefer Cat Grizz. So the other thing, it kind of sucks that ESPN Game Day decided not to go there. They decided, they can go to Oregon anytime, and they've already been there this year. So you only get like one chance a year to go to Missoula or Bozeman, and I think they blew it. So from the Idaho's, over here in Idaho, there was a time when Idaho versus Boise State was a big game in these parts. That was back in the 80s and the 90s, back when Fritz and I had lots of hair. But now maybe Idaho State maybe becomes that rivalry, but I don't know. There's such a difference in distance between the two teams, and I think actually if you ask Vandal fans, their bigger rivals are Eastern and Montana. So I think as far as this game goes, Montana State is, I think, slightly better team overall. But playing at Washington Grizzlies Stadium, I would give Montana the edge. It just seems like we just saw crazy things happen there, and we saw it a couple of weeks ago where, this gremlin came up and squirted grease on the football right before Eastern snapped it on the 5-yard line, and the guy fumbled it and stuff like that. So it just seems like, and it's not like Montana's a big underdog. I mean, it might be a slight underdog if we say so, but I think they have the advantage playing at home. Who knows? It might be the first of two meetings between these two teams this year.
I think when the odds do come out, I agree with both you and Fritz. I think Montana State will come out as the favorite to start. I don't know if the line will shift towards Montana with that home boost, but yeah, when these home teams, when they play in this rivalry, it runs deep history, and you can see it on the field. It just means a lot more for these guys, especially a lot of them being from the state, which you don't see a lot in college football, anymore. So that's why this rivalry is one of my favorites, even though I am biased and live in Montana. But Mike, let's jump to you. Last week, you talked to me about Montana State having an edge like we just discussed, but maybe talk to me about your perspective on Montana and maybe what you've heard about the rivalry and any history of it. Just, tell me anything, what you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm practically a newborn baby to this rivalry, but don't know much. But from the vibes that I get, it seems like a really big deal. Just like any time of year, this time of year, it's like all these big rivalries start to come back, and you get these big matchups. I hear about 2 weeks, I'm gonna be on edge and irritable because I'm getting ready to watch the Buckeyes go finally get their win back against Michigan. So, or that team up north, I should say, even though I'm all the way over here in Washington. But yeah, like rivalry football, there's just nothing like it. I think it's going to be important for the Grizz to try to take the run away or limit the run as much as possible with the Bobcats. They got two running backs in Julius Davis and Adam Jones who are absolutely stellar, and then also obviously their quarterback Justin Lamson can run the ball himself as well. So there's a triple threat there, so to speak, and then on top of that, he's been excellent throwing the ball. So they're going to have their hands full on defense. I think no matter what the outcome is, it'll be a close game.
Thank you, Mike. John, I know you're eager for this one, just like I am. Let's hear what you got.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I could see any of the early lines for this game on the Sportsbet Montana at all, but I couldn't find anything in my quick search. But yeah, I'm on board with everybody on. I think this is going to be a lot closer than we've seen in recent years for the Brawl, for Cat Grizz Cat, the Battle of the Brawl, whatever you want to call it. So I'm very interested to see how the Montana receivers go against the Bobcats secondary and how vice versa it goes, because like Fritz mentioned early on in this podcast, I've been very adamant about Montana's secondary's inability to turn around on deep balls, and it's gotten them in trouble a lot in terms of pass interference. So I wonder how Montana State will take care of that. And then when I was watching the Eastern Washington game a few weeks ago, just the ability that Eastern had to take underneath routes and get 7, 5, 10 yards each and every play with Shackle. So, it's one of the battles that I think is going to be very interesting. I do think Montana's got the edge receiver-wise. And I'm also going to be interested to see how they like to use Michael Wortham. I feel like they're going to bring out some different sets, bring him into the Wildcat a few times. Might even see him throwing the ball a couple of times. Who knows? So, yeah, it's just the scheming with this game. You throw the records out with Montana State. It doesn't matter what the season's like. This game is always going to be two ferocious fan bases going after each other, two teams on the field who don't like each other, want to beat each other. It's just a good old-fashioned rivalry.
It is a good old-fashioned rivalry, and I think for the Great Divide Trophy to either go to I'll give a kind of a point for each. I think the Great Divide Trophy will go to Missoula if they're able to stop the run in the 3-3-5. I think they are going to have to bring some more pressure with just 3 defensive linemen. I think in the past we've seen them try that, and Montana State's done a really good job of basically game planning that they expect Montana to change their defense. So I think for Montana to win, I think defensively they got to stop the run, even though it sounds so simple. That's what Montana State loves to do. All their fans talk about it, just run the dang ball. And for Montana State to win, I think if they can get the edge on defense, I really think that they could stop Ayat. I know Ayat's had a great season, and I've really seen growth from him this year as a quarterback. But if they can get him disgruntled, under pressure, they can try and find a way to slow down Wortham. I think Montana State will pull this one out. The special teams factor, I know Bobby Houck is a special teams advocate, so I would be surprised to see Montana State win the special teams battle. But as Fritz said earlier, Montana State's had a better season for the special teams. So to be honest, this game really is 50-50 to me. If it was in a different site like Montana State, I really could see the Bobcats rolling like they usually do. But they're such a good team, and Montana's so good at home that making the picks this week, it's going to be really tough. And I've kind of battled it for 2 or 3 weeks now all season. But speaking of picks, let's wrap up here, guys. We're going to go to John. He is our leader. 74 out of 80 so far. He was perfect last week. John, let's hear what you got. I'm excited to hear what you think for Cat Grizz.
Wow. I didn't realize that I did so well last week. I was thinking that I missed a couple. So, yeah, we'll start it off with the game we didn't discuss, and I think that Portland State's going to grab win number 2 at Northern Colorado. I feel like the Bears have just kind of tapered off at the end of the season. They're struggling really bad, and Portland State's shown some signs of life here in the last few weeks. They did get that first win not too long ago, and with how they came out against Montana, they kind of had to give themselves a little bit of confidence despite the scoreline not going their way. I'm going to take Northern Arizona at Weber State. I take Idaho in the Battle of the Domes over the Bengals. I'll take Davis to beat Sacramento State in the Causeway Classic. I've got Cal Poly at home over Eastern Washington. That one was borderline for me, but I'm going to go with the home team there. And then to counter that, I'm going to pick Montana State on the road to spoil Montana's perfect season.
Wow, John. I thought you were going to pick Montana. That's a interesting pick, and I thought you were going one way, but I totally understand it, and you're the leader for a reason, so I guess I can't always predict what you're going to do. But we do have a change in the standings. Mike, you have gone to second place now. You were perfect last week as well. You're 70 out of 86. Let's hear what you got.
Yeah, we'll start with the Eastern game. I'm going to have Eastern Washington pulling away and finishing the season at 500. I'm going to take Idaho over Idaho State. I think UC Davis holds off Sacramento State, kind of stunts their momentum that they've been building. Northern Arizona over Weber State. I'll take Northern Colorado over Portland State. And then I'll say Montana State pulling away late.
2 Montana State picks. All right. Fritz, you are in third, just a game behind Mike. You can get second place back here this week. Let's hear what you have.
Both you guys have left me openings, I think. So I'm going to take UC Davis in the Causeway Classic over Sac State. I kind of disagree. I think UC Davis will win. I think NU will win, and those 2 teams will be at large into the playoffs and leave Sac State to pack up for the FBS. I'll take NU over Weber. I'll take Eastern over Cal Poly. I'll take Portland State over UNC. I'm going to take my Bengals over Idaho. And then I'll pick the Grizz over the Cats just because they're at home.
Fair enough, Fritz. Mark, you're 68 out of 86. Let's hear your picks for the week.
All righty. We'll start out with the game of the week. Northern Colorado will win at home against Portland. Oh, that's not the one. Okay. Hey, Northern Colorado is going to win at home against Portland State. Northern Arizona, I'll take at Weber State. I'm going to take the Vandals to finish on a win against Idaho State. I'm going to take UC Davis to send Sac State off to wherever they're headed with a loss and a non-playoff berth. I'm going to take Eastern Washington to win at Cal Poly, even though we don't know who their quarterback's going to be. And in the last game, we've talked about it before. I was thinking this has been kind of a one-sided rivalry for Montana. They've won like 30 more games than Montana State has. If they were playing in Butte like they did in the 20s and 30s and 40s, maybe Montana State has the edge. I was looking, I think over the last 22 games, it's 11-11. And so it's going to be as close as I think, and over here, we have a lot more Montana fans than Montana State fans. Although when Jeff Choate went over to Montana State a few years ago, we picked up a lot more Montana State fans over here. Plus, I think he beat the Grizz all 4 years he was there. So, and I think
He did.
3 of them might have been over Bobby. I'm not sure, but anyway, all four were over Bobby. Okay, and then
I don't think they were all over Bobby, but he did get.
yeah, I think the first one was over the guy before him, and then
Bob Stitt.
But yeah, and I think I know Bobby probably wasn't unhappy to see Jeff leave the conference, but all that said, the Grizz are at home, and the Grizz have that magic at that stadium, and even though Montana State would win if they played in Butte, they're not playing in Butte, they're playing in Missoula, and so in the Battle of the Town Pumps, I'm going to take Montana.
That leaves us 2 that have picked Montana State, 2 that have picked Montana. Next year, guys, I'm hopefully these picks will mean more. We're going to try and do something about that. I've been talking to John about how we can make sure these picks are more important. But this is our last week for all the picks in the Big Sky, so it's been really fun, and I've been glad to be able to do it with you this season. Excited for next.
To throw a note in there, I'm not trying to get that just because I'm winning. I
was like, yeah, let's do
I'm happy with the
Monopoly. Let's do a money
money
pot, you know.
The moment that we start playing for something, I'm gonna go down the hill with all my picks. So.
we need to start hitting secondhand stores and looking for some trophy and make it a traveling trophy.
That's a great idea, Fritz. And John, now I know why you've been bringing it up to me. I get it now. You went right behind me. No, I definitely agree. I think we should definitely do something next year. And so then there's some more meaning to it. I think Mark brought it up first, and I really thought about it and went back and forth with John. So we'll stay tuned. I'm excited we'll definitely have something next year for some more meaning. I'll give my last picks of the regular season here. I'm going to have Portland State winning. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to have Northern Colorado defeating 1-win Portland State at home. Give me Northern Arizona over Weber with the interim coach boost. I still don't think it's enough because last week I only scored 3 points. I'm going to take Fritz's Bengals over Idaho. I really liked watching Idaho State this season. They're a really fun team. I like Cook at quarterback, so I'm going to go that direction. Excuse me. I like UC Davis to bounce back against Sacramento State. I think the football, whatever you want to call it, ball doesn't lie. The football, whoever watches over, the football gods, I should say, I think they're going to give it back to UC Davis this week, and I do believe the Aggies will get that win. So they're benefiting for a playoff spot and not dropping in the seedings. Next, I have Eastern Washington over Cal Poly. I really like what I've seen from their quarterback and the DBs for Eastern this year, so going to take that one. And finally, for my Cat Grizz, Brawl of the Wild, Montana Super Bowl, I've heard them all. I wanted to go completely non-biased with this pick. Even though I did graduate from the University of Montana, I didn't want to seem like I was just being a homer here. I went through the rosters, looking at the matchups, the stats, and overall, I started looking at the history of it, and I was very, very close to picking Montana State. But since it's at home, it's a home-based rivalry, and Jeff Choate's out of the conference, as we said. I'm going to take the Grizzlies on Saturday. If it was anywhere else, I would most likely take the Bobcats, but I do see Montana having that edge at home, and the mecca of the FCS is, as it said, it's one of the hardest places to play, and Montana State hasn't won there in a couple attempts, so got to keep rolling with the Grizz. But I really did try to make sure that I wasn't just picking the Grizz because I'm an alum. But that's going to do it for us this week. I'm super excited to watch all these games Saturday. They're starting to have some big meaning, and I'd really like to thank my panel for joining me today. They've done a great job all of the regular season with the research and their picks, and it's been so fun talking to you guys. But overall, that's going to do it. If you guys have your predictions, you want to comment below, that's great. I'm going to have an interview with Grizz linebacker Ryan Tyrrell and Bobcat linebacker Rylan Ort. They both played in the last couple of seasons. They don't play anymore, but we're going to do an episode tomorrow, so you guys should stay on the lookout for that. I'm excited to get that one on the YouTube. But other than that, thank you for joining us all regular season. I'm excited to talk playoffs soon, and we will catch you next week to discuss what happens in the Brawl of the Wild.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.